From abandoned prison complexes to mysterious ghost houses, these are 10 of the most incredible and beautiful abandoned places in the world. Number 10. Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia. Now this is a place that was not so incredible before it was abandoned. Wait for it, it's a jail. And it was built in an extremely old style, like those you might see in a Hollywood movie. If you've watched the movie Shawshank Redemption or Cool Hand Luke, you'll know what I'm talking about. Beginning its operations around 1829, Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia boasts grand architecture and a notorious past for housing some of the most feared and dangerous convicts of all time, including the famous kingpin Al Capone. The cells were designed in a way that makes it easier to monitor the inmates and to regulate strict discipline. No matter how grand and luxurious the penitentiary is, once you are inside, the feelings are not so entertaining, as the very architecture and design makes you feel like you are trapped inside, with no way out. Ever since its closure in 1971, the complex has been declining and decaying, but more recently, the authorities have decided to maintain it so it doesn't fall into worse disrepair and abandonment. They preserved it as a National Historic Landmark in Philadelphia. It's open to visitors year-round, so don't forget to look around if you ever happen to be there. Number 9. Bodie, California. The next abandoned place here has a bad and almost sad reputation. It is a reminder of how greed breeds isolation in the end. Welcome to the ghost town of Bodie. Back in the heyday of the gold rush in the mid-1800s, California attracted a lot of fortune-seeking men, fueled by greed for fortune and wealth. And this region was no exception. Once the word got out that there were gold mines around, hundreds of miners flocked to this beautiful landscape. Soon the place turned into a small town, with small apartments, saloons, bars, and of course a lot of brawls, bar fights, and broken noses. This was the Wild West, after all. The rush kept attracting many until the late 1800s, when the fortune seekers found other spots to dig for. Eventually the population dwindled, and by the 1930s the town was abandoned completely. However, that didn't mean the end for Bodie. The ghost town became a National Historical Landmark of California in the 1960s, and today, many tourists are flocking to the town to catch the eye-popping sights of the surrounding plains and the remnants of the American dream. Would you like to visit Bodie? Or are there any other abandoned places from the Old West that strike your fancy? Share with everyone down below in the comments. And remember, don't forget to subscribe to The Biggest and hit the bell button so you can keep yourself updated. New videos are coming out every week. Number 8. San Juan, Mexico. The next remnant of a time long gone comes from south of the border. This is another town lost in time and frozen in history. The town of San Juan Parangaricutiro in Michoacan, Mexico. The town was a small Christian settlement from the 18th century and well into the 1940s. However, the town was, and still is, neighbored by the most unusual neighbor a town can have: a volcano. That didn't stop the town from thriving, though. The townsfolk lived a simple and religious life. The town was mostly agricultural, and not many people flocked to it. As the records show, life was serene and peaceful. But all that changed beginning from 1943. When the Paricutin volcano began to erupt, it caused irreparable damage to structures and the lifestyle of its residents. Eventually, molten rock and ashes made life unbearable for the people, and the town was eventually abandoned. Slowly, with the passage of time, nature and wilderness took the town over. Today, all that remains is the old church tower, and only a handful of tourists visit the place in the wilderness. However, the place and the surroundings are still a sight to behold. It's surprising how devastation can leave such a peaceful and gentle environment. Number 7. Caliazine Russia. Being the largest nation on the planet, almost twice as big as the USA, Russia is home to many incredible deserted places in corners of the world you might never expect. Its controversial and rich history only adds more to this. The medieval town of Caliazine is one such site immersed in rich Eastern Orthodox history and heritage. Lying on the bank of the river Volga, its founding dates back to the 12th century. During its 900 years of existence, the town was almost always peaceful. No bloodshed or major violence, and no political strife. You'd love to live in such a place, wouldn't you? You can let me know down in the comments. The most prominent landmark of Caliazine is the Orthodox Church and the towering bell tower of St. Nicholas Church. Standing a massive 244 feet tall, it was erected in the 16th century. The tower is home to a massive 35,000-pound bell that was cast to commemorate the coronation of the Tsar Nicholas of Russia. However, during the era of the Soviet Union, the region underwent a massive industrial development project. In 1939, the town was relocated to a higher ground, and the rest of the old town was purposely flooded to create the Uglich Reservoir. But here's the catch. Some people might say that the disaster actually made the area more beautiful. The bell tower remains intact, boldly standing above the waterline in the middle of the lake. Of course, the flooding created several smaller islands in the region surrounding the dam. It is a heart-touching and a mentally soothing sight. During the winter, when the lake freezes, the surrounding becomes a paradise for ice skiers. And today, many tourists visit Caliazine to experience the beauty of the old town. Number 6. Pompeii, Italy. You know what? There is a strange relationship between towns that were abandoned and volcanoes. Why? Because this next site is another ancient catastrophe that became an incredible feat of nature almost 2,000 years later. Welcome to Pompeii. Pompeii was an ancient city, its founding dating back as early as 350 BC. And over the course of almost 4 centuries, the city turned into a haven of Roman culture and heritage. Agriculture and livestock allowed the city to grow, and its population surged over the years. Amphitheaters, city halls, granaries, and gymnasiums flourished in the city. However, over the years, the city was trying its luck and tempting fate by the day. Why? Because each day that Mount Vesuvius, an active volcano in the region, did not erupt and cause a catastrophe was a lucky one, and the people slowly began to forget the peril they were in. But their luck finally ran out in 79 AD, over the course of 2 days. Vesuvius erupted, and the volcanic matter, ashes, and poisonous gases consumed the once thriving city. Many people were able to escape, but those who didn't were buried alive under 20 feet of volcanic ash. The city disappeared from the annals of history for almost 2,000 years, until it was rediscovered back in the 1800s. Considered a refined time capsule from the past, the city and its painful legacy was well preserved by the ashes, and today, more than 2 million people visit this UNESCO World Heritage Site. A beautiful escapade through time to the beautiful landscapes and sceneries of ancient Rome. Number 5. El Hotel del Salto, Colombia. Colombia has a celebrated history, a vibrant culture, and one of the most exquisite landscapes in Latin America. Built during the eccentric era of the 1920s, this was a noticeable house, or rather a mansion designed exclusively for an architect. The mansion's architecture represents joy and elegance of the elite society of the 1920s, but perhaps the most elegant feature of the mansion is the environment it is located in. It's surrounded by mountains, wilderness, and the majestic Tequendama Falls. After the departure of the architect, the mansion was turned into a hotel for several decades, until it was finally abandoned due to the contamination of the river next to it. But all is not lost. Today, the mansion is preserved as a museum, and anyone can witness and relive the elegance of the 20s. And speaking of eccentric things, did you subscribe yet? Go ahead and I'll keep you updated with more interesting and eccentric videos coming out every week. Number 4. Russian Secret Complex. Paranoia and war lead people to design and build bizarre and wonderful structures. This next place is something like that. And just like the town of Caliazine, it is in Russia as well. Named Tagansky Protected Command Point, this place is a massive 7,000 square foot communication complex that can even withstand a direct nuclear attack. How? It is hidden 60 meters below Moscow, and that's not all of it. Even after a nuclear attack, the place was filled with enough supplies to last for months. Now that's what I call wartime preparation. Even if Moscow had been leveled by foreign bombs, the leadership of the Soviet Union could have survived and authorized counterstrikes against enemy forces. After all, the Soviets were super paranoid about American and NATO invasions back then. The above-ground entrance was disguised as an old building, and the underground portion was reachable by a secret train track off of the Moscow metro train. However, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the place was declassified and went out of operation. Today, the complex is open for everyone, including American visitors. The place is an amazing reminder of how wartime paranoia can lead people to build out of this world stuff. Number 3. Winchester Mystery House, California. Speaking of Soviet leadership and their paranoia, this next place could be a perfect fit and perhaps the crowning jewel of ultimate paranoia. Welcome to the Winchester Mystery House in California. As the story goes, Sarah and her husband William Winchester, who was a very wealthy gun magnate at the time, were happily married. They had a little daughter, but a few weeks after her birth, the child passed away, and within a year William got sick with tuberculosis and passed away as well. Shocked by the deaths of her loved ones, the widowed Sarah turned desperate and sought the guidance of psychics and mystics. Finally, she was convinced that a curse had befallen her. And what was the advice she received? They told her to keep building a house non-stop and make it peculiar and bizarre, more like a hedge maze to baffle the spirits that were following her. With the massive fortune she inherited, she kept building and building more until the house became a mansion with 24,000 square feet and more than 160 rooms. There were stairways that got to nowhere, secret rooms, and ways that led to dead ends. She kept building it for 38 years, and the construction only ceased once she passed away at the age of 83. Number 2. Lee Plaza Hotel, Detroit. Lee Plaza Hotel was an icon of the once prosperous Detroit, the Motor City, the heart of the American automobile industry. Back in the heyday of the Lee Plaza Hotel, it was the golden age of Detroit. The city boasted an incredibly high standard of living, and it was one of the wealthiest and most prosperous settlements on the planet. However, just as the city began to decline, so did the hotel. And as the peak population of 1.8 million people slowly began to abandon the city due to many economic and social problems, the hotel too lost its way. Eventually, it became a symbol of a lost legacy and a forgotten remnant of a golden age. But the grandiosity and majesty of the heyday still remains, at least a bit. Perhaps you too should visit the place if you ever go to Detroit. It's fairly easy to spot with its 15 stories. Number 1. Chernobyl and Pripyat, Ukraine. The unquestionable best item to conclude today's list is the site that was the place of the worst man-made disaster in recent history. Can you guess it? The name of the disaster is a part of our culture for all time. Chernobyl. But along with Chernobyl, there is another sister site that was equally affected by the disaster, the town of Pripyat. The Soviet Union immediately forced everyone to abandon these sites following the nuclear meltdown of the Chernobyl nuclear facility. Before that, Chernobyl was one of the oldest settlements in the region. Pripyat was a city that was built in the 1970s to house the workers of the nuclear power plant in Chernobyl. However, the disaster had a long-lasting impact on both the nature and the population of the region. It is estimated that it will take almost 20,000 years for the radioactive contamination to recover in this area. Over the last 34 years, nature has reclaimed most of these towns, and today they look totally like towns that came out of a zombie apocalypse. But the natural surroundings, after all this time without any human intervention, look absolutely gorgeous and almost surreal. But sadly, it's a dangerous place to visit and better off avoided. And that is all for today, folks. What other places do you think deserve a spot in the list of the most incredible abandoned places? Let me know in the comments. And hey, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so I can keep you up to date with all sorts of brand new videos coming every week. Until next time.